Hey everybody, it's been a while. Hope all the VCers are doing well out there. I've been wanting to make a video, but I've just been tied up with this and that and real life stuff, so unfortunately I haven't really found the time, but thought I would check in today and continue with my complete Kinks reviews. So we are heading towards the end run here. This brings us to Word of Mouth. I always thought of this as a 1985 Kinks album. It's technically 1984. It came out November 19th, 1984. Reason I guess I thought of it as an 85 album was I went and saw them. Third and final time that I saw them live was on this tour. No, Valentine's Day 1985 with my then girlfriend, and I'd seen them a couple of times before that in 80 and 83. So yeah, Word of Mouth. Like I said, November of 1984. This album, I had it, I bought it when it came out. Somewhere along the line, I sold it, so I picked a new copy. Well, I picked a used copy up here 2 or 3 weeks ago, so I could reacquaint myself because it has been a while since I've heard the record. So yeah, this is sadly the tail end or the end of the Kinks revival that started there in 79, and they got pretty big in the early 80s, got popular again on probably the biggest scale they had ever been popular, with the exception of the very first time they showed up with You Really Got Me and songs like that in 1964. And I remember this album, remember songs from this album showing up on the radio a little bit. I remember seeing a few videos on MTV, at least one or two in passing. I was actually kind of beginning to lose interest in MTV about that point, to be honest with you. But so yeah, their album's low budget, 79, got to number 11 on the Billboard chart. Give the People What They Want got to number 15, and State of Confusion got to number 12. This album only made 57, and a 45, Do It Again, off of this album got to 41. Compare that to Come Dancing from the previous album that got to all the way up to number 6. So I don't know, music kind of changed in the mid 80s, not for the better in my opinion. There's a big difference between early 80s, first half and the second half of the 80s. But I guess the Kinks and this type of music was kind of people just lost interest, or they're starting to fall out of favor. This was still a fairly popular album at the time, as I remember, but um, I don't know. I guess it was kind of their last hurrah as far as being in the public eye and popular. Even though they would make, I believe, 3 or 4 albums. I'll have to look at the count. 3 more studio albums follow this, but this was kind of their last blush of popularity or fame, even though it didn't really do all that well, to be honest. But yeah, so I had this album and I liked it quite a bit at the time. Not quite as much as the 2 or 3 albums that preceded it. And listening to it again for the first time in years, really, it's kind of a Jekyll and Hyde album. But so let's go through a little bit. There's the cover, not a very good cover. A lot of mouse. Title's Word of Mouth, so I guess that makes sense. Same thing on the back. A lot of mouse. Titles of the song. Very 80s graphics and artwork there. The inside is no big deal. I need to get a paper sleeve and replace this plastic sleeve. They're still on Arista Records. I believe this is their last album with Arista, and they moved to another label on their next album, I'm pretty sure, and I've got that album. I just need to double check it. Anyway, not a great cover. The cover, I had an idea what would have been a good cover, and I'll get to that in a minute, but figured we would just run through some of the songs. I made some notes here, having played this album several times, and we'll get to the songs and my cover idea that I had for it, and why I call it a Jekyll and Hyde album. So, the first song on side 1 is Do It Again. Great song. Love that song. It's one of my favorite Kinks songs. And that's the beauty of the Kinks, because obviously Do It Again, great song though it is millions of trillions of billions of universes below their best work. You know, the You Really Got Me's, Autumn Almanac, Dead End Street, all their 60s classics. But it's to the Kinks' credit that a song like Do It Again can stand on its own as a great song, even though it doesn't measure up to their very best work. So, yeah, I love the kind of the Hard Day's Night sounding opening chord of it. Um, the lyrics are a little bit not very good, ham-fisted. They're not bad, but they're, compared to Ray Davies' earlier work, him being one of the best lyricists of all time, in my opinion, kind of ham-fisted lyrics. But it's just a great rock and roll pop song. Love that Hard Day's Night opening chord. Love the song. I'd give it a 10. Um, it's a great song. One thing, kind of a side note, about several months ago, I was in a grocery store, and over the they were playing music over the speaker system. I heard Do It Again come over the speaker. That was kind of a nice surprise, because it's not the kind of song you expect to hear in a grocery store or anywhere else. But so Do It Again, great song, great opening. So far, so good. Next song, Word of Mouth, the title song. It's very 80s sounding song, not necessarily in a good or bad way, just saying it's very 80s sounding. It's a little bit of a random song. It's not a bad song, but it's not a great song. I was all set to write it off, but then this last week, the song keeps playing through my head, and as I'm driving to work or whatever, so it stuck with me. So I guess it's a little better than I thought originally. Good Day, third song, another great song with some flaws, and this is where it comes in, where what I wish they would have used for the cover, but we'll get to that in a second. Great song, love it, loved it back then, love it now, but it does have that very 80s production sound, 80s sounding harmonica, if that makes sense. Uh, has that kind of Caribbean steel drum background music playing behind the main melody, which is a little bit cheesy. If they would have recorded this song 5 years, 5 or 10 years earlier, or 5 or 10 years after, they probably wouldn't have used any of that, and it might have been a better song for it. So that's kind of a drawback, but otherwise it is a great song. Um, but at the end of it, it has the church bells, which is really cool, like the bells you hear at the church in England, and it's also the same type of bells that the Kinks use back some 20, almost 20 years earlier in Big Black Smoke, on one of their songs that came around uh, their 67 album. So, and I just, Something Else by the Kinks was 45 off that album. And so that's really cool. So, Good Day, you got the line in there about the news said that Diana is dead. And in 1985, myself and others that I remember, my girlfriend at the time, we thought he was talking about Diana as in Princess Diana, Princess Di, who, of course, was not dead, not at that point anyway. And she died, I don't know, when was that, 96 or something, some 10 years later, 96, 97. So he is not talking about Princess Di. He is talking about Diana Dors, Dors, an actress who she actually died in 1984. Uh, she died. I had written down the date. Yeah, May of 1984. This came out November of 84. Kind of the British Marilyn Monroe. Wasn't as well known in America as she was in England. And in the song, he sings, Ray sings, "I used to fancy her a long time ago," which I'm sure he did, because if you've seen her, you would understand why he would fancy her. She's pretty hot. And she was an actress mainly in the 50s, 40s, and 50s. So when he would have been, you know, uh, teenage years or whatever. Anyway, Diana Dors, if you ever get a chance, check out Yield to the Night and Tread Softly Stranger. Those are two of her better movies. She made a lot of movies. Uh, really good looking, kind of a lot of her movies were the Marilyn Monroe, kind of the oh, the the bombshell comedy type movies, bombshell blonde comedy type movies, but she also did some serious acting, and Yield to the Night and Tread Softly Stranger. I think those are both on YouTube. They're kind of hard to find on DVD, but definitely worth checking out. Diana Dors, really good looking, and she's mentioned in Good Day several times. The cover idea, if you happen to have the Smiths album called The Singles, which is I guess the greatest hits, or just a collection of the Smiths singles. The cover, the girl on the bed, looking at the cover picture, the girl on the bed, that is Diana Dors, and that is from the movie Yield to the Night. So that would have made a much better album cover for this record, because I think the Smiths album actually came out in the 90s, I'm not sure. But so kind of gotten off course there, but there you go. So yes, song number 4 on side 1, Living on a Thin Line. Great song again. Dave Davies written song, and Dave Davies sung song. Might be one of Dave's very best songs of all time. It doesn't quite top Death of a Clown and some of the songs that he did in the late 60s, but it's right up there with it. Some of the best lyrics on this album too, because it's actually singing about something, and it's not just the lyrics on this album otherwise are not very deep or interesting, I'll put it that way. Living on a Thin Line has great lyrics, has a great melody, great singing, great music. My favorite song on the album here, I think second favorite will probably be Do It Again, followed by Good Day, but Living on a Thin Line, favorite song on there, and Dave Davies' best song of the last 20 years or so, really. You know, Bernadette on the album that preceded this was a pretty good song, but Living on a Thin Line is a great song. Song actually gave the album a bump years later, more than 10 years later, because Living on a Thin Line was featured in the closing credits of an episode of The Sopranos, and got a little bit of radio play from that, because people were wondering who is that and what's that song, and it got a little bit of popularity some, I don't know, 10, 15 years after the fact because of being on The Sopranos. Great song. There we go. So side 1 ends with Sold Me Out, kind of a driving guitar rock and roll song, upbeat, energetic, rah-rah shouted lyrics. It's infectious, a little bland lyrically again. I like the song. I'm thinking Sold Me Out is the title. This is Ray Davies, probably my guess, singing about Chrissie Hynde, who he had married and had a daughter with, and then she ran off with what's the guy, Jim Kerr from the Simple Minds, and married him instead. Around about the time or right before this album came out, so that may be what that's about. I'm not sure. Pretty good little rock and roll song, and that ends side 1. Pretty solid side, good stuff so far. Now we come to side 2, and this is why I do the Jekyll and Hyde aspect of the album, in my opinion. So we get to side 2, first song, Massive Reductions. Starts off really cool with some kind of spacey music, get a little bit of jazz, freestyle jazz, little strange stuff going on. Sounds interesting, sounds good, but that gives way to pretty much just guitar rock, and the song Massive Reductions is cutting back because of not having money or the economy. Kind of a poor man's Low Budget from the Low Budget album, the title song from the Low Budget album from '79. Massive Reductions is an okay song. It's not as good as Low Budget, and it's just sort of a copycat version of that song 6 years later. So it's okay. Not a bad way to start off side two. It's an okay song, but nothing great. Second song on side two, Guilty, another Dave Davies written and sung song. It's uh, it's a strange song. It's not as good as Living on a Thin Line by any means. It's got little echoes of Cheap Trick type sound in it. It's got a little bit of a Van Halen type sound in it toward the end there, and it's got a very sounds like can't really put my finger on any specific song, but the sound, the feel and sound of an '80s new wave, early '80s new wave sounding song. And yet, for all of that, it doesn't add up to a lot. It's it's uh, it's just okay. I will give it. It does have a harmonica in it that sounds good. Sounds like the way a harmonica should sound. It doesn't sound like that '80s type of harmonica. And if you're wondering what am I talking about with '80s harmonica, it's kind of like '80s saxophone, that beer commercial saxophone sound, that was in a lot of pop songs in the '80s. That's just really cheesy. And I swear, Adam Lee, I do love the '80s. That's when I was a teenager and some of the best years of my life. And a lot of that music I love and is great, but some of it didn't really age so well. I'll put it that way. Uh, and so when I say bad '80s production, that's what I'm talking about. So Guilty is it's okay, you know. Next song up on side two is called Too Hot. It is, I guess, kind of the fitness exercise craze of the '80s, is what Ray is singing about here. This song is terrible. This song is just the steel drum Caribbean music is back, and it's what am I talking about there? I'm talking about like oh, that god awful song Kokomo by the Beach Boys. That kind of musical background sound. I'm talking about what's the terrible Tom Cruise movie? I know it's a trick question. Every movie he's been in is terrible, but Cocktail, that type of just that cheesy, bland, faceless. Anyway, Too Hot has that sound to it. It's god awful, and it sounds a lot like a Huey Lewis and the News song, and that's not a good thing at all. Worst song on the album by far. So number 9 is didn't write the name of the song down, and they're not numbered on here. It is a ballad, and I'm thinking, oh, it's Missing Persons. I did write it down, which I thought of the old band Missing Persons, the old '80s band. I like them. Doesn't have anything to do with them. It's a ballad. It's not as good as Ray's ballads of recent years of the recent albums, things like Don't Forget to Dance, Better Things, and Art Lover. It's a ballad that's just sort of sits there and doesn't amount to a whole lot. 10th song on the album, side 2, is Summer's, not 10th song on side 2, 10th song on the album is Summer's Gone. It's got its moments, but it does, again, I've described a lot of songs on this album this way. It's got some moments here and there, but overall there's not much to it. It's a very, very 1985 sounding song. It's you wouldn't have heard a song with this sound 4 years earlier. You wouldn't have heard it 4 years. You know, it's just sort of kind of a flat song. Just not much to it. The end of the song is kind of nice, but most of it just doesn't add up to anything. Final song called Going Solo. The kind of is in I was with someone, now I'm not, so I'm going solo. I think it's another Ray singing about Chrissie Hynde song. That's what ends the album. It's not a very good song. It's kind of a peters out and flat, disappointing into the album. So, thinking of side 2, there's a couple of songs that are not so bad. Massive Reductions, I guess, is okay. Guilty, kind of okay. But overall, side 2 is not very good. And it's not something that I think I'm going to be going back to anytime soon. Side 1, however, is really good from start to finish, with the exception of it Sold Me Out. It's probably the weakest of the one, but you got Do It Again, Good Day, Living on a Thin Line, and something else. I forget. Let's look at the notes and see. Word of Mouth, yeah, the one that I said I didn't like, but that's been playing in my head for all week, so I guess I like it more than I thought I did. So yeah, that's that. Good side one, not a very good side two. Kind of a schizophrenic album in that way, a two-headed Janus, whatever you want to characterize it as. Scale of 1 to 10, I'm thinking I'll give it a 7. I think that's fair enough, or about right. So there, Word of Mouth by the Kinks. This is got a little bit of airplay and notice when it came out, not as much as the 3 studio albums and the live album that came out before it, but things were changing, music was changing, unfortunately, and the Kinks kind of got forgotten past this point, but they still got a little notice here. Pretty good album, at least side one, and that's it. We are coming close to the end of the Kinks records. When I started this review series, I thought I was probably just going to do the first album up through maybe Arthur or Lola, just do the 60s stuff. Lola's 1970, and no more, but I had fun with it, so I just kept on going. I didn't have those 70s, a lot of those 70s albums, so I went ahead and bought them. A lot of them was the first time I'd heard them, so that was fun to do. And I had the 80s albums. I had the 60s and the 80s albums way back when I was younger. And so Word of Mouth, then I thought I would just do up through Word of Mouth because I never bothered with the 4 or so albums that came out after Word of Mouth. And I went ahead and bought those, so I've got those. So I'm going to go ahead and do the Kinks right through the end of their career when they broke up in 1996. And that will be that with the Kinks. And I was thinking of, I kind of enjoyed this. I don't know if anyone's watching these or cares, but I'm having fun making the videos, so it doesn't really matter, I guess. But I've been enjoying this, talking about the Kinks. I was thinking about maybe doing some other bands after this with their whole catalog, or, and I thought of one band, because I mean, I don't want to do the Beatles or Led Zeppelin or something that people do reviews of all the time and that everybody knows them anyway. I might do those later down the road, but I was thinking of another band that I really like that doesn't get a lot of notice. I hear them mentioned on here sometimes, and I may end up doing them. They have like 6 studio albums, but then I thought the other day of yet another band I'd like to do, and this band gets mentioned here occasionally. I've never really seen reviews of their albums with one exception, and I hear them mentioned sometimes, but not a whole lot of mention. But they're a band that probably everybody has at least one of their records in their collection here in the VC, and a band that everybody knows. And I thought it'd be fun to do their records, and they're a band that has one of those huge bazillion album catalogs. So I think I'm going to do them next after I finish the Kinks. And who am I talking about? Well, you're just going to have to stay tuned to find out, as if you really care. But you'll find out soon enough, and I will get to them. So that's, I think, everything I had to say about Word of Mouth with the Kinks. And sorry I'm not looking at the camera as much on this video because I'm reading notes here. But Adam 80s Heaven got it right that time. Wants Christmas album videos. And so I shall do one of those for you, Adam, coming up here. Might even do that tonight. Hope everybody's having a good day and doing well. We'll see you.